Today's show is brought to you by Fantasy Frames. Fantasy Frames is the ultimate sports fan reward. This is a custom, unique frame. If you've won a big tournament on FanDuel, if you've won your fantasy league, these are great. It's a custom, unique frame that displays your favorite team or your fantasy sports team and their player cards. So check them out, fantasyframes.com. That's fantasyframes with a Z.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome, one and all, to the show. Kind of felt like I was introducing a circus.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Aren't you?
Sort of, yes. Thank you. It is Tuesday, September 22nd. This is the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. I'm Andy Holloway, joined by Jason Moore and Mike, the Fantasy Hitman, right?
You are correct, sir.
That's always good. When I get the names right, it is always a good beginning to the show.
Good start.
Mm-hmm. We got a good one for you today. We're going to be talking news and notes from around the league, injury updates, waiver wire.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know who to sign.
I want to know.
Yeah, I know.
I'll let you guys know in just a bit.
And
You got to wait.
We're going to go through all the offensive and defensive linemen that you need to sign. This is for the real teams. We do it for the actual NFL scouts and GMs. We let them know who to sign.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Mailbag. We're going to talk mailbag today. We've got a good show. You can go on, follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. If you want to follow Jason, you can do so at JasonFFL. You can follow Mike at FF Hitman, and you can follow me at Andy Holloway. Be sure to check out our fantasy football community, the ever-growing community on jointhefoot.com, which is a great place to post your questions, start sit, waiver wire questions, those type of things, and have the community join in. We're on there all the time. Go to facebook.com/thefantasyfootballers if you want to follow us there. And you can check us out on YouTube as well, the YouTube channel, and watch this show. Hello.
And make sure you subscribe. Even
You'll
if
see,
you don't normally watch it on YouTube, you should subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah, and on YouTube you can see our new little foot soldier.
Yeah.
That I bought for.
I built it.
Yeah, that Mike built.
I custom molded it.
I was going to say that's expensive. Thanks though for the single.
It's worth it
for the one-off.
It's worth it.
Building the Foot Clan.
So one thing let me ask you, quick question. What to do with Andrew Luck?
Drop him.
It was funny because I got in an argument with somebody, not really an argument, but I was talking to her about, she wanted to start Mariota this week. And I said, that's crazy. And it is crazy. I mean, that would have been crazy to do.
Like a fox.
But then Mariota outscored Luck, and I looked on fantasypros.com and the expert consensus, and there's 100 and something experts. And none of those people said to start Marcus Mariota, and welcome to fantasy football.
And
I mean, that's just fantasy football.
You have egg on your face like a bunch of fools.
Well,
the truth is, you
just play the odds.
Yeah,
that's what you're doing.
It's about the process. Mike was saying this before the show. It's about the process. We're not prophets. Nobody is going to get everything right. You guys listen to essentially some insight and the rationale behind why we do things, and then you make the decision. If you want to go with your gut and do that, you can. But we wouldn't recommend it in most situations.
So Andrew Luck, are we worried about him? Are we worried about that team? What I saw last night was a team that was very similar to what the Eagles look like this weekend, which was kind of a snowball downhill situation where it just kind of got worse drive after drive after drive. I mean, I was on Twitter with that Gore fumble, and just about I needed that Gore touchdown, and he busts outside, and then he just, here you go.
And for me, what was fun is I was up by 17 points in my other primary league. And the only player left on the opposing roster was the Jets' defense. The Jets scored 16 points.
Wow.
And so every fumble and interception was excruciating. And I was going back and forth with my friend who was laughing in my face, especially on that Gore fumble. And then I came out victorious.
Would you do anything different? I mean, are you just rolling Luck out indefinitely?
Yes.
When do you hit a wall with something like that? Because people, the tweets have been coming in. What do I do?
This is kind of like the Peyton Manning of last year, where it was the questions are coming in. When do I bench Peyton Manning? and I'm not saying you bench Andrew Luck, but I'm just saying it's a similar situation.
Towards the end of the year you're talking about?
Yes, when the demise hit of Manning last year.
I think there are situations on a matchup or if there's another guy where it's worth considering. But Andrew Luck is an otherworldly talent. He didn't show it this last game against a good defense, and that team does look a little bit in shambles. But one thing I would just caution us a little bit on is Andrew Luck is amazing, but last year he had 40 touchdowns. Obviously, the years before that were only 23 or something like that, 20 and 23. Last year he had so many dump-off touchdowns to running backs near the goal line that we thought was going to be an aberration, and then it continued and kept happening. So I would say this. Andrew Luck is maybe not the absolute top end. He's going to finish the year as number 1 or number 2 type of quarterback, but he's still going to be better than most of the guys you're ever going to find on a waiver. So if you drafted him, you're probably forced into starting him, or you can wait until he has a great couple of weeks, which he'll put together, and maybe look to get some great value for him and beef up your roster elsewhere, and then stream.
He did play 2 really good defenses.
Yeah,
I'm not selling Luck. I'm keeping him and I'm playing the whole
Would
year.
you? Okay, putting you on the spot then, and I think I know the answer, but Carson Palmer plays at home against San Francisco this week. Andrew Luck plays against Tennessee.
I would.
Or I'm sorry, Andrew Luck plays against. Is that right?
Yeah,
that
the
is
Titans.
Tennessee. Yeah,
I
okay.
would. I'd probably go with Andrew Luck.
Okay. Just curious. So, all right. Once a week, we like to go ahead and read a review from the listeners. All the reviews on iTunes, subscriptions, and reviews on YouTube really help us out. So we're going to go ahead and read one right now.
Reviewasuarus Rex.
This one comes in from Politics as usual. It's politics as usual, but they put a 1 in there. I got to read it as it is. And they say, fantasy football podcasts tend to get very stale. There's a lot of numbers, stats, and rankings, which everyone obviously wants, me included. But the fantasy footballers give you all of that and more. They entertain. They make you laugh. They blurt out straight nonsense, looking at you, Mike.
Wait, what?
You make up. No, he goes on and says you make up for it in beard beauty.
Okay.
Seriously,
Okay.
you guys are fantastic.
All right, fine.
And I'm looking forward to the rest of the season with you guys leading the way. Keep being awesome. Well, thank you, Politics as usual.
So dumb and beautiful. Is my
That's
role.
what you're called, dummy. We like to read those, not to toot our own horn, but because this is we genuinely think of this show as a community of people, not just 3 guys in front of microphones. You know, we interact with everybody on Twitter and in email and on jointhefoot.com, and so that interaction is great, and I appreciate the fact that he recognizes that we're not trying to just come on here and pretend to be, throw 5 spreadsheets at you and tell you this is exactly what's going to happen this week. We are a perspective-orientated show. We like to bring our research and knowledge and the things that we know and help you make a good decision, which results in a win, hopefully. And so let's go ahead and get into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, I'm going to quickly hit several of these, and then you guys can give me your kind of thoughts. Your kind of thoughts, not your regular ones.
Well, what do I? My nonsense. I'll give you my nonsense.
I believe you said you blurt nonsense. So
Then
don't.
I will blurt my nonsense.
Okay, there you go.
It will be blurted.
What's the latest on Drew Brees? We have some quarterbacks. Drew Brees, Jay Cutler. We know Romo's out. What's the latest on our quarterbacks?
The Drew Brees saga yesterday was quite a trip to follow because it was
Saga?
yeah.
You go Saga?
That was straight nonsense, man.
Did I
Don't
say
you go-
saga?
yeah, you
you
said
said
Saga.
Saga?
Isn't
Yeah.
it Saga?
Definitely
Yeah. That I
saga.
can't believe I said saga.
If anything, I would have thought you'd say Sega.
Saga.
All right, so sorry to distract.
The saga of Drew Brees was he was not injured at all. There, no one was concerned. Then he was going to miss multiple games, and now it's his shoulder is kind of hurt, but he can probably play through it.
The expectation is most likely that he's going to miss a few games. I think that's
Is that what we're reading lately? The last
Second
thing
opinion.
I read was
The last thing I read was a second opinion was taking place today. And the truth of the matter is if there's question about his health and his performances thus far, tell me, start somebody else right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it
absolutely.
Says, the latest report is there's a reasonable possibility he can play week 3, and if he doesn't, then it's television commercial superstar Luke McCowan is the next man up.
Yeah, I would expect
They have to pull those ads then.
if I had to bet, I would.
Right?
Yeah, the backup.
Yeah, he's
ads.
not the backup anymore. No,
Yeah, give him a couple weeks. He's still the backup. If he won't start anyway. I think Breeze plays this week. That would, if I had to bet my house on something, that's what I'd bet it on. At its press conference on Monday, Texas coach Bill O'Brien said Arian Foster was day-to-day.
Yeah, still don't know.
So, Arian plays this week. Do you just throw him right in the
Yep.
lineup?
Yes.
Yep. Because I think that Lock and Forest speculation about him playing last week was not completely unfounded in the sense that he probably is taking an extra week to be sure.
And then there's the reports that he might not be back till week 5. But
There is no maybe with Arian Foster. He's in, and he's my guy.
if he's playing, he's in.
Yep.
Because if he's playing, that to me says that he's ready to go.
But if he is playing, he's going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Doesn't
Then
that?
you might play him injured.
Yeah.
You might play him even if he is, not active. All right. Fox Sports reports Eddie Lacy's ankle was very weak and sore on Monday. Do you expect Eddie Lacy to play this week?
Well, he doesn't play until Monday night, which gives him an extra day of rest. It also makes the waivers, we'll talk about this in a minute, but it makes the waivers a little bit more strategic. You need to put some thought into the James Starks grab. I expect, for me to say I expect him to play or to not play is just a guess at this point. It's kind of pointless. I think there's a good chance of either, and you just got to watch practice. It's, we're still on a Tuesday right now. Watch as the week goes on. If you're an Eddie Lacy owner, and we'll talk about this in a second, you've pretty much got to pick up James Starks, although they have a bad matchup this week, right? They're going up against Kansas City, so either option is not the best. A hurt Eddie Lacy or a full James Starks against Kansas City. I'm not sure I'm in love with either of those.
Mike, Marvin Lewis expressed confidence in Jeremy Hill despite the fumbling. I think that's what we said on the show. We thought he'd be okay, but it's not a good sign when Gio comes in and dominates and Jeremy Hill stands on the sideline. So you're obviously starting Jeremy Hill?
Yeah, it's if you have both and you have to make a decision on one to start, you're still going with Jeremy Hill until further notice. And I think he can recover from this. He had some fumbling issues last year and was benched in a very, very smart move by his head coach, because you should always bench anybody who turns the ball over.
If you are a member of Jay Cutler's family and you were starting him this weekend, he will not be active for the Bears. He will miss at least a couple of weeks. And then Matthew Stafford we'll see if he plays this week, according to Jim Caldwell. So he's another guy you want to find a better option for. Tevin Coleman has been diagnosed with a bruised rib. Will be sidelined a couple of weeks.
Bruised or broken?
I think it was cracked.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
broken rib. Bruised. He'd just be a baby.
Oh, come on.
Go bruise
Have you
your
ever
ribs.
bruised a rib?
Well, no, but I know that these.
Where would he have bruised a rib?
Of course not. Yeah.
Sorry.
He
slips in the bathtub a lot.
My MMA days, I bruised them all the time.
Yeah.
But so he's going to miss a couple of weeks, and it's a pain threshold thing. He'll probably have a flak jacket on, which does hamper running backs.
Yeah.
If you remember Trent Richardson in his actual good year, well, by good I mean his fantasy production year, he wore a flak jacket too because he broke a rib. just point it out.
Eric Decker last night had a great game, but he hurt his PCL, and they're wondering if he needs surgery.
Yeah, the news is that he hopefully doesn't. It seems like he's not going to, but either way, when you hurt a PCL and you're borderline surgery, that's normally you're going to be missing a few weeks.
How good is Brandon Marshall?
The answer to that is very good.
He's great. He's great.
He went from good to very good to great really quickly
in this conversation.
Yeah.
He's always been great.
It's like we're the Three Bears.
He's always been separation, huge. I mean, he just manhandled three guys into the end zone.
That was, I mean, in defense of the Colts, that was also after Vontae Davis went down and their other two cornerbacks were down. He was literally going against practice squad type guys they just brought up.
And he did what he should have done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So last bit of news, Brashad Perryman, people want to know about him. He had a sprained PCL, which is what we were just talking about.
There's a lot of PCL injuries going around.
Yeah.
That's the new hotness.
Was that Andre Ellington?
Yep.
Man. Every year there's something.
I'm going to injure mine just so I can be on the list.
All right. Well, we'll talk about you.
The cool kids.
Blurting host, Mike Wright. Spotted running routes, Brashad Perryman. I think that's the funniest report when it's like, Like, is there like a reporter in the bushes that his head pops up with binoculars? Oh, there he is running routes over there.
It's not his head. He has one of those full-on spy gear
Yeah,
periscopes, so no one can see him in the bushes.
That's how Shefty gets all his news.
All this says to me is it could be time to stash him.
Keep rolling out Steve Smith until otherwise noted.
Right, but I'm saying the Ravens really need him.
Right. No doubt. Let me ask you guys, any other impressions from the game last night? The Jets are 2-0. The Colts are 0-2 along with the Seahawks. Those two teams might have been on a lot of people's Super Bowl lists.
Yeah. And 0-2, I think the probability is when you start 0-2 throughout the years, 11% to make the playoffs. They were talking about it.
I think both those teams probably make the playoffs.
I think one of them, at least, will not make the playoffs.
That'd be interesting. Anybody else stand out from the game last night? Gore had an okay game in terms of like yards per carry and actually the way he looked on the field, but he fumbled on the goal line and didn't score. And
they were also using Josh Robinson way too much because every time Josh Robinson got the ball, he seemed to just do nothing with it. In addition to that, you have the
what?
I just lost what I was going to say.
Okay, well, this is what I was going to say. Frank Gore, if you're concerned about his yardage, he has 88 yards. Frank Gore currently has as many yards as DeMarco Murray is on pace for the entire season.
I would not use DeMarco Murray as kind of a benchmark for anything right now.
I'm just saying.
Our friend Joe Wan, who writes
funny.
over at Numberfire, what did he tweet? That Arian Foster is currently only 11 yards off the pace of last year's leading rusher despite not playing.
That's funny.
And a true story is all of us are only 11 yards behind the league's leading rusher last year.
Chris Ivory is who I was going to bring up.
Oh, okay.
He stole my brain away. Chris Ivory looked good as well. Did you see the play where he hurdled the man and ran a bunch? But then
he hurdled the man and ran a bunch. He hurdled the man and ran a bunch.
To grandma's house we go.
But then Bilal Powell was used a lot in that game. You had Ivory kind of hurt this past week, and then they had a big lead. So I think it was an indication of game flow as to why Ivory didn't have an even bigger game. Ivory, even though he didn't have the greatest game, I know he won some leagues in FanDuel. He did enough in FanDuel to help out. And also, Brandon Marshall was another great FanDuel player for Monday night. He is a big Monday night player. If you yourself are not playing on FanDuel, or if you have not yet experienced daily or weekly fantasy games, those are the next big thing that seems to be coming. There are over $75 million won a week right now on FanDuel. The way that the game works, it's a salary cap format, so you get to pick any players you want. You can choose from the entirety of everyone, and you've got like a $60,000 budget on your team, and you get to buy guys, put your roster together, and you can go in head-to-head matchups just like normal fantasy football, or you can go in big giant tournaments and win $1 million. But it's a fun game. It's fantasy football that you know and that you love brought to a new weekly awesome game. So here's what you do. Go to FanDuel.com, click on the microphone in the upper right-hand corner, and use our code BALLERS, and sign up now. For new users, every dollar you deposit, FanDuel will match it with up to $200 that gets earned as you play. That is a bonus of $200 free cash money. So don't forget to use our code BALLERS. FanDuel.com, where every day is a new season. That's FanDuel.com. Sign up today.
And before we get to the waivers, listen, Foot Clan. The NFL season has started, as we all know. SeatGeek is the place to get tickets to this week's game. Our listeners can use promo code FOOTBALLERS in the SeatGeek app and get a $20 rebate off your first SeatGeek purchase. It will take less than a minute to download the app today. SeatGeek does a ton of things that other ticketing sites don't. First, SeatGeek pulls in ticket options from hundreds of online ticket sellers to create a one-stop shop for tickets. When you shop on SeatGeek, you're seeing virtually every ticket option available for that game all on one page. No need to go anywhere else. Also, they have this great feature called Deal Score. It ranks every ticket on the market with a 1 to 100 value score and plots the best deals on a color-coded interactive map so you can easily identify the best ticket values in the building at a glance. Finally, SeatGeek's mobile app makes the ticket buying process seamless and easy. No more typing squiggly letters that you can't read in a box like other sites make you do.
On SeatGeek, you can store your credit card, and once you find a ticket you want to buy, just complete the purchase with 2 quick taps. Tap, tap. So this is what we need to do. Redeem your promo code, save $20. Download the free SeatGeek app today, enter promo code FOOTBALLERS. SeatGeek will then send you $20 once you made your first purchase. Remember, download the SeatGeek app, promo code FOOTBALLERS, and every ticket purchased on SeatGeek is backed by a 100% guarantee.
All right, guys, we're going to take some time. We're going to get into the main event here, the waiver wire, see who we need to be paying attention to, what kind of fab budget we should be spending on these guys, and let's get into it.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah.
That's a cat.
Thank you. All right, so waivers. There is a lot of waiver noise around a lot of guys. This is week 2. You probably have a couple guys that have put a couple weeks together, and you have injuries, and so let's go ahead and talk through some of these. So let's start with the wide receiver position. This is one of the hardest positions in terms of waiver wire value because guys can have humongous games, and the question for us as fantasy owners, as fantasy team owners is, does it sustain, and would you start him? That's the question I ask is, would I start this guy? Because just because he's, had a good week, do I want to put him on my bench? I mean, and wait and see sometimes. So Stevie Johnson has had another good week. If he's on your waiver wire, he has to be rostered, right?
Has to be rostered because of exactly what you said. You would start him. If he was on my team, I would pretty much put him in as a flex over on many of my teams. Mm-hmm. He would actually be my flex. I have confidence in him. I have confidence in him in the red zone. Antonio Gates is still out, so I like Stevie Johnson a lot. I'm not sure how many waivers he's on, but he's got to be.
Do you know his ownership percentage? Can you look at that?
I can find.
I'm curious. In the meantime, a guy whose ownership percentage is about 0 or close.
No,
to
he's on Travis Benjamin's team.
He's on his own team.
Yes,
and Johnny Manziel's team.
Probably. Maybe.
Travis Benjamin. I think he will likely be the most added guy. That I would reason to bet that that's the case. He's probably the most added guy, at least at the wide receiver position. Benjamin came out last week and caught a long touchdown. This week he had 2 touchdowns with Johnny Manziel. And let me ask this in a way that favors a signing of Travis Benjamin.
Okay.
All right. That offense has produced top flight wide receiver play from Josh Gordon in the past. If you don't have other weapons there, because I hate Dwayne Bowe. He's not even playing. I don't think he has any talent whatsoever.
He's got a lot of money though.
Sure, he does. And Hartline's not a big play guy. Hawkins is okay underneath. Do you sign Travis Benjamin and expect him to make these kind of plays? I mean, all year?
No. That's the best I can say is
no.
I believe, and you can look this up. I believe he's caught 3 catches in each of his 2 games.
Yes, 3 a game. Yes.
Yeah, so 3 catches is not going to normally yield you good production. And the whole Josh Gordon thing, at some point, someday in the future, we've got to be able to get past, like every team, whenever there's a bad quarterback and a bad offense but one good wide receiver, it's always Josh Gordon did it. And it's like, Travis Benjamin is not Josh Gordon.
No, because he's Travis Benjamin.
Right. And
that's a silly comment.
I'm just saying, now it's a different offense. It's a different quarterback. It's a different team, even though it's I guess, technically the same team, but a different team of guys. And I just think, that if that's the best we can do, the game plan of the Browns is not going to be to air it out. And I expect that he gets 3 catches a week or something like that. And maybe he'll have those big weeks. But going to Andy's first point, would you start him? Would you grab him, put him on your bench, and then say, I'm going to roll him this week? If you have to do that in a deep league, maybe that's all right. But I feel like he's a little bit more of a waste, especially if he's going number 1 on waivers.
Reminds me a little bit of Allen Hurns last year, who had a couple big games for Jacksonville, but had limited target numbers.
Travis Benjamin smells a little Ogletree-esque.
Stevie Johnson is owned in 54% of leagues. So
you need to add Stevie Johnson immediately.
He is a great ad.
Some other guys at the wide receiver position. I want to throw some names out there, and you guys tell me whether you would sign them. Michael Crabtree.
100% over Travis Benjamin.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I would if I have wide receiver need and I'm low in the waiver priority, I would put him on my bench.
All right, Rashard Matthews.
Same deal with Crabtree.
I mean,
Same deal with Crabtree? What do you mean?
Like, if I'm low in the list and I need wide receiver help, I'll put him on the bench.
Matthews?
Yeah. But Matthews has done well the first 2 weeks.
I think with Devontae Parker getting involved, I guess we'll wait and see what happens with Jordan Cameron.
Matthews isn't a guy who's going to hold that role all year.
Leonard Hankerson.
Yeah, he's a low priority.
Okay. Devin Funchess?
And Devin Funchess is only on this list because Jericho Crabtree is out for multi-weeks, if you have not heard that. So he's a speculative ad at this point.
So really, from a starting perspective, Stevie's the one wide receiver you want to make sure you're signing and starting.
Yes.
He is for me.
And I'm going to bring up Ty Montgomery because he's not a guy you're going to start. But if you're putting these other guys on, I would rather have a Ty Montgomery than a Rashard Matthews.
He's the wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, Ty Montgomery is the wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, who looked great this last week. There's been, Devontae Adams rolled his ankle. He's going to be fine for this next week. But my point in all this is, if you can't start the guy, if he's not a guy that you're going to ever play, then I want a chip on my bench that could be something bigger. And I think Ty Montgomery has that talent and is on that offense that can do that. So I like Ty as a stash.
And another name I didn't write down here, but Marvin Jones. He's another possible speculative ad.
I'd rather add Marvin Jones over most of these guys.
Well, it's because you refuse to believe that Michael Crabtree is actually a decent receiver.
No, I didn't refuse to believe that. I just refuse to believe that the number 2 wide receiver on a team that has a very up and down offense is worth owning compared to other guys.
But
it sounds a lot
so
like
the
Marvin
number
Jones.
Well, yeah. Well, Marvin Jones is the number 3 though, because Tyler Eifert's clearly the 2.
He doesn't play wide receiver though. He plays tight end.
Option. I'm saying option.
All right, at running back, we have Dion Lewis, Matt Jones, David Johnson. We have a lot of big names here. I want to kind of know how much you would spend to get these guys. Dion Lewis is somebody who, it's always hard to bank on a Patriots running back, and it's still hard to bank on a Patriots running back. I mean, I will be the first to admit I made a mistake thinking Blunt was going to get some work. He didn't. It was Lewis again who fumbled again, it didn't even matter.
And he got right back in.
So I have no idea. I mean, they need him in the Vereen role, so he's starting to become safer, is my point, because of the fact that regardless of who gets the between the tackle carries, he's going to be involved in the passing game. And that offense is, right now, I believe that the second most points scored in the league, and they just blitzed a Buffalo defense that at home that we thought was probably is really good. And so Dion Lewis, if he's on your waiver wire, what kind of money are you spending on him in Fab?
Oof.
I would certainly blow my waiver priority on Dion Lewis.
Yeah. I agree with that. Oh, man. You're probably looking at, if he's still on your waiver at this point, so a lot of people will have noticed by now. So between 20 and 30%
of your
Fab.
Of your Fab?
I would go 20% because I would grab him. I would spend, but I'm not going more than 20% because of the Bill Belichick factor. I don't want to waste too much of my Fab and then have a guy that ends up possibly hurting
Jonas
me.
Gray?
Right,
Anybody?
exactly.
Lewis is owned in 40% of leagues.
Yeah, so he's available in most leagues out there.
So let's talk about Matt Jones, because I think we all like Matt Jones, the talent, all three of us on the show. Mm-hmm. I think we disagree with his value right now. Mike, you said you would flex Matt Jones.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Especially this week against the New York Giants.
And so is that a product of simply the statistics, his production this past week, or does it go beyond that?
It's not the production, it's the snaps. He out-carried Alfred Morris. Now, I'm not saying Matt Jones takes off and becomes a running back 1 and just leaves Alfred Morris in the dust. I'm saying that seems like a higher RBBC committee situation going on in Washington than we had first anticipated. And because
19 carries is a lot of carries,
and they were up, so that was a game flow situation. But if you're up, you feel like you're going to give it to your main guy. The guy who's going to hold on to the ball, a proven guy like Alfred Morris, and maybe Matt Jones. We don't know yet what he is exactly. We don't know about his ball control.
So Matt Jones had 19 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns on Sunday, splitting carries pretty much with Alfred Morris. I believe like Mike said, he had about 2 less than him.
One more,
something like that.
One more snap or one more carry.
So I think what you said there that stuck out to me is there is a trust factor with Matt Jones, them giving him the ball in that situation. So especially, it was a close game. I mean, St. Louis could have gotten back in that game very easily. So Matt Jones had a big game. He represents a really great waiver ad because you get, even if I personally wouldn't flex him immediately, like you would, but he's a great waiver ad because he's an upside talent. He has the ability to potentially take a role in a huge rushing offense. I mean, they're a running team. 19 carries and only out-snapping Morris by 1 says a lot of rushes.
And something that we haven't talked about, the offensive line coach, I can't think of his name right now, but he was the offensive line coach in Dallas last year.
Bill Callahan.
That's where. Thank you. And the offensive line in Dallas was dominant last year. Now, clearly Washington's line is not dominant by any means, but they are severely improved upon last year. And the Dallas line, they look still good because they have a ton of talent, but they don't look like last year's offensive line.
Yeah, not yet.
So maybe the factor of an offensive line coach is not being taken into consideration as much as it should be. So I like Matt Jones a lot as a speculative ad.
Jason, if you were in your waiver priority situation here, put these guys in order for me then, for somebody out there because this is what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to set their waiver priority at running back. Put Dion Lewis, Matt Jones, James Starks, and Devontae Freeman in order.
I would go Dion Lewis first because I think he's got the best chance of doing it all year. And then Devontae Freeman next. He's going to be the absolute starter. James Starks after that, and Matt Jones after that. Now, that's if I'm more of an Eddie Lacy owner. Otherwise, I would put Matt Jones ahead of James Starks. If I'm the Lacy owner, I'm looking for another option this week.
But if you're the Lacy owner, don't you put Starks at the top of your list opposed to...
Maybe, and it depends on your roster. Because they're going up against Kansas City, I think there's a chance that as the Lacy owner, you might have to play Starks at Kansas City, in which case you put him at the top of your list. You pay a lot to get him. But if not, if you have any other option and you can flex him out this week, I think your better option might be to roll without your... take the injury there and move on. But you should still absolutely grab him for the future. But, yeah, I would put Dion Lewis at the top of this list.
I'd go Lewis, Freeman, Matt Jones, James Starks.
Now, we did the world a disservice yesterday by not speaking the name of David Johnson.
David Johnson!
So David Johnson scores touchdowns.
All he does is score touchdowns.
He's available in many leagues,
Yep.
less due to that song. But what are your thoughts on David Johnson? Because he's about a 50% owned player, 46% of leagues he's owned. Now, their offensive line is going to improve at Arizona. We're Arizona natives. We know a lot about this team out here. Mike Iupati is coming back this next week. We just saw the 49ers get shredded pretty handily. What do you think about David Johnson moving forward? And is he now the guy to own over Chris Johnson in Arizona because of his big play potential, because of the passing game, and because of the fact that he's going to get more carries?
Not if you need a running back this week.
So you would start Chris Johnson over him in a standard league this week?
Yeah, just because of opportunity. You can't. David Johnson's not going to score a touchdown every time he touches the ball, and Chris Johnson is going to get more carries. Now, David Johnson is still a speculative guy that I want on my bench because he has to be earning more playing time. You can't have a guy come out and perform like this and then say, oh, well, we're still going to give him the 5 carries.
He returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and he had another touchdown run, about a 12, 15-yard run.
And the dude is fast.
Yeah, when he
and huge.
When he returned that opening kickoff, he had the fastest clocked time. They've got microchips in the shoulder pads now. Fastest clock time of anybody in the NFL so far this year. He is a fast dude. And personally, I would much rather have David Johnson than Chris Johnson.
For long term, I agree.
For long term, but I'm saying if I have to choose on my waivers and I have to start a guy this week, I'm still going to take David Johnson, and I'll start him because maybe he finishes a point or two behind Chris Johnson, but maybe not, and yet I've still got value going forward long term. So for me, I'd much rather have David Johnson.
So before we move on from the running back position, one guy we mentioned in passing but haven't talked about yet, Devontae Freeman. Tevin Coleman's going to be out for a little while. Devontae Freeman does catch the ball a little bit. He hasn't been very productive on the ground, but he will get the lion's share of carries. So would you start him this week?
Yeah, absolutely. What is their matchup this week?
He hasn't been very productive on the ground.
They're going up against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys' run D looked pretty darn good. I do expect that they're going to get him involved in the passing game. I would probably still start him just because the opportunity is going to be there. You always want a guy who's going to touch the ball 15-plus times, and I don't see how he doesn't touch the ball that many times, given the fact that Tevin Coleman's going to be out.
He just needs Julio Jones to go down on the one. That's all Freeman needs.
Yeah, you're right. And so, tight ends. Which tight end are you looking to sign this week?
Well, Jordan Reed for me is still at the top if he's available, there's a possibility maybe that Jordan Reed is still there. And my next guy I'm looking at is Eric Ebron. He's highly involved in the passing game. He's getting a large share of the targets. Now, some of this I suppose depends on Matt Stafford's health, because if I think it's Dan Orlovsky is the next man up in Detroit. We don't know what he's going to do. And if he's most likely just going to feed Calvin Johnson if he's the backup quarterback. But Eric Ebron is gaining the trust of Stafford, and he's getting involved especially in the red zone.
9 receptions on the year for 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's scored in both games he's played in, 5 receptions, 4 receptions. And the game on Sunday, he had 10 targets.
Exactly.
That's a lot of targets. That's the kind of thing you like to count on when you're streaming a tight end or you're looking for a value at tight end. Jason, is it Ebron for you, or is there another guy that stands out to you at the tight end position? And would you spend waiver priority on?
There's 2 guys. I would pretty much spend a little bit of waiver priority on a tight end almost every week, unless I've got one of those top end guys that, like Kelsey.
How do you spend a little bit of waiver priority?
Well, a little bit of fab, or I put him in my waivers and I'm willing to ruin my priority, but not at the top.
Gotcha.
That's what I mean. So there's 2 guys I like. Kyle Rudolph against the Chargers. The Chargers have a very good pass D, but the tight end has been getting through in each of the first 2 weeks. So I think that Kyle Rudolph has a great opportunity to touchdown this week. That's what I try to kind of project with tight ends. And while it's not quite the same touchdown, Jared Cook I like a lot, because he's going up against Pittsburgh. I actually picked him up in one of our leagues this morning, and Jared Cook has been heavily involved in the passing game. Pittsburgh's defense has been giving up a lot of yards to the tight end. So those are things I like. I like Jared Cook.
He's another guy, Cook, who's been 5 receptions in each game.
Yeah.
And we know, from years past, he has the talent to be a pass catcher, and at least in this system with a new quarterback, you might see some differences start to emerge, but 6 and 7 targets in those games. The big stat line from the weekend was
Davy
Crockett. All right,
Gilmore of the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Crockett, Gilmore, 2 touchdowns. Tight end, when Dennis Pitta was there, very productive. Not a lot of receiving options.
A Mark Trestman offense.
Do you just sign Crockett Gilmore and throw him in and then watch your opponent go, who's that? And then, we were all talking about when they drafted Max Williams, the potential of Max Williams coming into an offense. Now, he hasn't moved up the depth chart, but doesn't the same potential exist for the tight end position?
Yeah, it does. I think his massive production is more a situation with the Raiders' secondary, their safeties. But he's a guy that let's say you're a Jordan Cameron owner this week, and we don't know if he's going to play. I might put Crockett on the bench as a 1-week fill-in guy.
Okay.
Why not?
Week 2 is a lot better for him, obviously, not just with the touchdowns, but he had 6 targets versus 4 the week before, and he caught 5 passes. And they were downfield. His average catch was 17.5 yards.
The problem with him I have this week is he's going up against the Bengals, and they've got a really good lockdown defense against the tight end. They haven't given up hardly anything so far. So I think there's better options on the waiver than Crockett, but he's looked really good.
But you don't get to sing an awesome song whenever he scores.
I always take issue with kind of the how good you are against tight end statistic. I think that's just a really bad statistic most of the time, because there are a select amount of tight ends that are part of a game plan and are talented enough to produce. The Cardinals could be the very best against tight ends if you go up against the 4 or 5 teams that don't have really productive tight ends. It doesn't mean Jimmy Graham's not going to go off on them.
Okay, well, last week they played San Diego, right? And Ladarius Green looked great. That's a team that uses the tight end.
Who played that? Who played San Diego?
The Bengals, who are now going up against Crockett Gilmore. And so they didn't give up hardly anything.
To Ladarius Green?
Yeah, who in week 1 was a monster and used like crazy, and San Diego uses the tight end. That I'm just saying. I don't think that.
I think you're proving my point. You're not talking me out of it, because I don't think that.
Let's get a Crockett Gilmore bet going.
Was Ladarius Green a monster?
He was
In
Is that
week
the
one?
expression?
Week 1, he was great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's. I'll.
But I agree with the sentiment of your statement that when you're looking at how many points a tight end scored in a particular week, you need to factor in, is the tight end a star? Did they play against Kelsey or Gronk and those things got inflated?
Yeah.
Or have low end tight ends have been having success against that team?
I would play Gilmore this week. I mean, Green had 5 catches against the Bengals. So, any other thoughts on tight ends? Richard Rodgers comes to mind. Kyle Rudolph we talked about.
Yeah, I agree with Richard.
Anybody
Rodgers.
who signed Daniel or Fells from Arizona? Darren Fells caught 0 passes.
Yeah, because tight end's just not involved in
All
Arizona.
right. We talk full stream ahead segment later in the week, quarterbacks that we like to sign. Last week, our streamers were who? Kaepernick,
Dalton, and Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, and they all had pretty productive weeks, multi-touchdown weeks for each guy. This week on the waiver wire, if you're looking to replace a Tony Romo or a Matthew Stafford or maybe even a Drew Brees, you're looking for a talent that has a good matchup this week and has the ability to produce fantasy points and kind of probably not have a really low floor. So what guys are standing out to you? Because there are 3 running quarterbacks, or at least quote-unquote running quarterbacks, that are on a lot of waiver wires right now, and Tyrod Taylor, Cam Newton, and Colin Kaepernick. So who's your guy from those?
Cam Newton is on a lot of waivers still right now after his week 1 look, and I like his matchup this week against the Saints. I expect him to continue running the ball, so I would take Cam Newton out of those 3. I would go Cam, Tyrod Taylor, then Colin, and Colin wouldn't be very high because I think is that in Arizona?
I believe
it is.
so.
Yeah, it's in Arizona.
Yeah, so I don't think Colin's going to have a great week for himself. I could be wrong on that.
So which one did you take? You said Cam?
I would take Cam, and then after Cam, for me, just if I'm ranking all the quarterbacks on the waiver, I actually like Alex Smith this week. I think the Green Bay game is going to be a more high-scoring game, a little bit more opportunity to use Jeremy Maclin, to use Travis Kelce, and allow the weapons to get out and score.
For all of Alex Smith's crashing back to earth last week, those were 2 of the best corners in the league that they played against last week. And Maclin, I think, is a great buy low. I'm going to say it right now. I think he's a good buy low in the sense that he hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't scored, and he hasn't put up huge numbers.
He has been spectacularly average.
Sure. But because of the matchup last week, coming into week 3, I think he's a great buy low. I really do. I think he can produce this week against Green Bay. So, and that kind of fits with what Jason was saying. Streaming defenses for this week. Which teams have stood out to you, and who would you start?
Well, you have the Texans against the Bucks. That's a top one. I kind of disagree with Jason. I think the Packers versus the Chiefs is a decent defensive play. Falcons versus the Cowboys. Cowboys struggling with it. It's going to be the Brandon Whedon show. No Dez. So I think the Falcons are an okay play. The Steelers versus the Rams, and the Patriots versus the Jaguars. Those are 5 good options that could be available.
All right, let's take some time and get into the listener mailbag.
Mailbag.
What was that?
I don't know.
That's the type of blurting that gets those reviews.
Then I will continue to do that.
You're kind of out of control with your dad jokes. All right. Mailbag today. If you want to submit your own question for the mailbag, you can do so on the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click on the submit a question button. It is very easy. You can also call us and leave us a voicemail. The number there is 302-464-TFFB. We like to play some of those voicemail questions on the show as well. So, Bryce in Minneapolis. I hate to panic on Jeremy Hill, but I was offered Jarvis Landry and Todd Gurley. Is this too tempting to pass up?
Rest of team: Latavius Murray, Frank Gore, David Johnson. So the running back depth. I mean, you're really going all in on Todd Gurley, which we think Todd Gurley can be very good, but man, we don't know when he's going to play. We don't know when he's going to play and get actual workload. So I love Jarvis Landry, especially in a PPR. He's been great. He has been fantastic, but I'm still going to hold Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, me too. I would not give up on Jeremy Hill from one game of poor play, especially when he's getting the support of his coach right now and considering your roster. I don't think you can take that hit.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. This is from Kid Fresh. All right, Kid Fresh. has a question for us, and he's 0-2. And he's wondering about taking Justin Forsett out for Dion Lewis. Is that something you do?
What? Oh, man. So Dion Lewis is playing the Jaguars, and Justin Forsett plays whom? I cannot remember off the top of my head. The Ravens are playing the Bengals. Man, you might consider doing it this week. I mean, you got Dion Lewis has just been fantastic, and I don't know if I can do it, though. I don't know if I can sit Justin Forsett yet.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one because you're putting reliance on that offense and what Belichick's doing, but the matchup is not good for Forsett, and the usage wasn't amazing for Forsett.
So what are you guys doing? Why
what are
am
you
I the
doing?
only one talking?
You're not. I just gave perspective.
Your perspective stinks. What's
I think
Jason's?
I'm still rolling Forsett. I want Dion Lewis on my team, and if I need to flex him, I would play him. But if I'm going to play him over an option like Forsett, that's pretty much a guarantee that he's not going to get a touch by Bill Belichick. I just know it. I know it in my bones that if
Belichick looks at ownership percentage
I know
before the week.
That's pretty much his main game plan.
And he also listens to this podcast, and I got through to him with you don't bench a guy simply because he fumbles one time.
Yeah, well, he's listening.
Thanks.
Because he likes Dion Lewis, and Stephen Ridley must be the worst person in history.
Yeah,
What else?
A personal issue there.
Stephen Ridley did something. Like
Yeah, he did.
Kicked his dog or something.
Yeah. Mark in Detroit. At this point, Charles Johnson's just taking up space. Thankfully, he's my wide receiver 4. Any of these waiver pickups worth dropping him for? I'm going to go through. You guys say yes or no. Would you drop would you drop Charles Johnson for Travis Benjamin?
No.
Doug Baldwin.
No.
Yes.
Tavon Austin.
No.
Tavon Austin.
No.
Ted Ginn Jr.
No.
Leonard Hankerson.
Nope.
Marvin Jones.
I'll put a maybe.
I'll put a maybe
Hankerson.
on the last two. I feel like they're the
Marvin
same.
Jones. Charles Johnson is interesting because he's to me kind of one of those.
How come we haven't talked about
Bible.
Ted Ginn Jr.?
That's fair.
The floor is yours, my friend.
Isn't he's the number 1 wide receiver
Yep.
on Carolina? No
Okay.
Jericho Cotchery, no Kelvin Benjamin. Greg Olsen got a pile of targets, but only came down with a few. I think you have to pay attention. I mean, this is a 2-0 team, and Cam Newton has thrown, I believe, 2 touchdowns last week. I just think Ginn Jr. This is a perfect example. I would much rather have Ginn Jr. Than I would Ty Montgomery or Marvin Jones or any of the guys that are in that.
That's
Maybe
fair.
they hit a home run this week. I'll just start a starter.
Looking at this list, I completely agree with you. And I think Ted Ginn Jr. needs to be moved up. Look pre-draft, right? Devin Funchess, an absolute unknown nobody who wasn't even that great. We just love him because maybe he could be Kelvin Benjamin, who showed up on the scene solely because he was the only target. Well, that is now Ted Ginn Jr. And I agree with you. I think we got to start. We don't like his name. Ted Ginn Jr. has disappointed for a long time.
I think that's why he's different than Funchess. Funchess is you didn't know.
Right. But you still had high hopes because of the role. And the role has now gone to Ted Ginn Jr. I think that's firmly established that he's the number 1 wide receiver there.
And he does have, he has wheels.
Yeah.
So at least he's not just if Cotchery's the number 1, which I guess he kind of was.
Right.
No,
Then
it was
you-
Ginn Jr. and Corey Brown.
You're not really excited about Cotchery because he doesn't have big play potential. He's older. Ginn Jr. at least he has some big play potential.
Yeah, but to me, it's fine. It's I'm not doing it because you have a quarterback who struggles with accuracy, and you have a wide receiver who struggles catching the ball.
Now, unfortunately, I wish we could continue talking, but we've met our yearly quota of talking about Ted Ginn Jr. And I have to legally I have to stop at this point. But you'll have to remember him. So Ryan in Columbus, hey guys, which would you recommend streaming in a 12-team 1-quarterback league? I have Tyler Eifert and Delaney Walker. Okay, so choose between those. That should be obvious. The answer is Tyler Eifert. Quarterback Eli Manning or Tannehill this week?
I believe I like. Oh man, I was gonna say Eli, but isn't he on Thursday night? I hate playing Thursday night guys.
Eli did okay last year on Thursday night versus
Yes, he did.
Washington.
Yeah, I'm going to Eli because Tannehill has a bad matchup this week.
Yeah, it was nice to see Odell Beckham Jr. come back to form. I mean, people Where was he in week 1? Well, there he was. Really, really good.
Didn't he do almost all of that work in the first half?
I mean, he's just so good.
Yeah.
Him, when he makes the catch, when you watch him make the catch and hit the ground, his next burst after that, so many yards after the catch. His touchdown was about a 20-yard pass that turned into a 70-yarder.
That's what he does.
That's what he does. All right, last question. Nicholas in Malta, Europe.
Malto meal?
Nope.
Ooh,
No.
No, it is.
Wait,
Nicholas from Malto Meal.
I don't think that's what it says. You should be excited. This is somebody from Europe listening.
Bonjour. I still.
No, you're supposed to purposely get it wrong.
I thought I did.
No, that is getting it wrong. You don't speak French in Malta.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Is Malta a Grecian island?
I was moving off of Europe, and it was a European language.
All right. So what were you going to say?
Konnichiwa.
All right.
Yeah.
That's how you do a dad joke.
Malta is between Sicily and the North African coast.
You had to just look at that up.
No, I know that.
All right.
And they speak Maltese.
And,
all right.
And coming up next, our geography podcast. Stay tuned.
Didn't you say geography or something?
Oh, I botched that word horrifically.
All right. New to the podcast. This is funny because his next line is, new to the podcast, loving the banter.
Oh, well, you just
we just spent too much time on Tedkin Jr. and Malta. So, which makes me want like a malt, by the way. Just like a vanilla malt. So.
Wait. Are you a malt person or are you a milkshake person?
I'm a malt person.
This guy's a malt.
He
literally orders.
I get extra malt powder
with extra malt.
Yep.
What about you?
I love all things that are sugar. So I would take the milkshake and I would pour it on top of the malt, and then I would ingest all of it.
I wipe my butt with malts. They are disgusting.
Wait, I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing.
No,
That's
it's a bad thing to wipe your butt with malt.
Just milkshakes are dominant.
Okay, so somebody said, this is a great final question. When we say you're going to get wet with the water bets, what exactly do you mean? Will there be proof, etc.? Well, yes, sir. We are actually going to pay out a bunch of those bets today.
Yeah, every time we get going to pay the bets, something huge comes up and we are not able to do it, but we'll
do it today.
Okay.
We really do pay those out.
Yeah. So there were several this past week. I lost a Percy Harvin bet when I thought he'd have 5 receptions. He had 4. I won the trifecta bet between...
Oh, hit the garbage button.
Oh, the garbage man can.
Hey, unfortunately for you, all of it counts. And so, we'll pay those out today. So you'll get to see those. Check out the website, thefantasyfootballers.com.
Yeah,
we'll post them on Twitter at the FF Ballers. So, all right, guys, we are going to have our mailbag show tomorrow.
You could douse me in a malt, and that would be a
seriously
penalty.
though, why do you not like malts?
Because it tastes like crap.
That's just stupid. That's stupid, and now nobody can listen to your opinion.
Do you like Whoppers?
Yeah,
Yes.
I like Whoppers. They're great. Of course I like Whoppers. They're malt balls. I would put Whoppers in a malt and eat that.
Oh, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com and follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers.